בוקר טוב. אמ, היום זה ה-20 לחודש, 25, נותרו לנו כמה ימים לסיום שנה, אבל אני מנסה לאסוף חומר כדי שאנשים יבינו שיש שינויים משמעותיים. הם יכולים לנצל את זה, הם יכולים להחליט, מי שרוצה סוף סוף למצוא את הזמן, לקחת אומץ ולהתנתק מהמערכת הקיימת. המערכת הקיימת, גם אם לא תתנתקו ממנה, מתי שלכם נוח וטוב, ותעבדו על עצמכם, המערכת הזאת בכל מצב תקרוס, ואתם תסבלו, כי היא תבוא בזמן שלא מתאים לכם, או שאתם לא מוכנים, ולכם יהיה קשה לקבל, ואתם תסבלו. לכן אני אומרת שכדאי לבצע את הפעולות האלה ביחד, בלי כל הטיגרים שנוצרו במהלך 4 שנים, בין קבוצות של אנשים שניסו להוכיח שהם יודעים יותר טוב, או מבינים יותר טוב, וחכמים יותר, במקום להחליט, אוקיי, אנחנו משנים כיוון, אנחנו הולכים לפי דרך מסוימת, ואנחנו משתפים פעולה ביחד עם מישהו שמבין ומכיר את המצבים, ולמד את המצבים מכל הכיוונים, מבחינה משפטית, חוקית, 40 שנה. במקום ללכת לחפש איפה ההוא מרמה, ואיפה ההוא, ומה הוא מוכר לנו, ולמה שייתן לנו, ולמה שיעשה לנו. יש תכונה מהספינה, שזה משהו מזעזע. אנשים מעדיפים לראות איך שאחרים קורסים, איך שאחרים נאבקים ונלחמים, כשהם לא מבינים מה קורה. האדם הממוצע רגיל לא מבין שהוא חייב לשנות, חייב. אם לא יהיה רצח אזרחים, מלחמת אזרחים. טוב, אני לא אמשיך כדי שזה לא יהיה ארוך, זה משהו שאני רוצה שתשמעו, נכון, אני לא יודעת כמה זמן זה ייקח, הווידאו. זה שוב אנה, על הודעה שהודיעה ב-18/12, ואני מעלה את זה.
Things just to deal with, having heat in their house, it weighs everything down. It makes it harder for us to make the progress we need to make. So I know
the good news for Christmas and New Year's is that you saying the bank is going to open?
Well, let's put it this way. The connectivity to make it happen is now there, so that we can run the game both ways. We can take money out of one pocket and put it in the other pocket. And in the banking system, that is critical. So, for example, if we find funds that are owed to the Americans, well, how do we get them into the new banking system if there's no connection between them? Other than actually going out and grabbing something physically, going and taking gold bars and putting them in a different shed, or, doing the sorts of things that you've seen us do, where we're ledgering bonds which are our bonds, that we then ledger into our system by hand. Okay, but you can imagine the bulk of the banking system is all digital. It's all on different kinds of receipts and records. And if you don't have the connectivity, here's somebody with their hand raised and saying, oh yeah, we have $750 trillion that belongs to you. How do we send it to you? How do we get it to you?
Ones are fine. Just send the ones.
Right. So
I guess what I was asking really, if I'm going to be as transparent as possible, is I know that there's all these different accounts that are getting, funneled so that it's easier for us to manage, but those with the GFG set up that have some deposits in it, is it possible that money would be available so that somebody could buy a furnace, somebody could whatever?
That's what we're talking about with the connectivity. You have
I see.
you have to be able to connect both systems
Right.
so that, you know, your AFD over here in this account can transfer into an exchange rate value against FRNs in another system or euros in a different system. And all of that for 185 different currencies had to be worked out. And we had to have the connectivity between these banks so that we could even transfer the large amount of money issues to be able to fund all this stuff, right? So, you know, I'm not joking when I say it's a big thing that we have the connectivity between the banking systems now. It's a big thing. And,
Yeah.
you know, it was one of the last final hurdles that we had to get over. We can
So
trade
the
with,
GFG could transfer into your local US bank account. And then the US bank account would pay the guy with the new radiator. Is that what you're saying?
no, I'm
No.
saying that we can now get our funds out of their system into our system,
Gotcha.
okay? So the hard part has been, like I said, well, we have $750 trillion, which is yours. How do we get it to you? Where's the conduit? Where's the means? How do you do this? Do you do it in tranches? Do you do it all at once? Do you do it by what's called an API, an actual custom-made interface? And how practical is that if you've got, you know, thousands of different transactions? You know, each.
היא מסבירה כאן שהדבר החשוב ביותר שהם סוף סוף הצליחו לסדר בנוגע לבנק, ולאנשים שלא מבינים, אז הבנק שבנו לאורך 17 שנה על פלטפורמה של באזל 4, לאנשים החיים, לא מה שהיינו רגילים בנק מסחרי, שתמיד אנחנו בחוב. מה שהם הצליחו, את הפעולה החשובה ביותר, כדי שנוכל לפתוח, כדי שיוכלו לפתוח את הבנק הזה, לבצע פעולות, זה במידה ויש לך כספים, נניח בשקלים בבנק, ואתה מבין שאוטוטו לא יהיה לך מה לעשות איתם, ואתה רוצה להתנהל עם החשבון החדש שאתה מקים, אתה יכול להעביר את הכסף הזה לחשבון ויחליפו אותם למטבע זהב וכסף. אז זה מה שלקח הרבה זמן, העיכוב. לא רק זה, זה גם בייצור של דברים נוספים אחרים, אבל זה היה החלק החשוב, להגיע להבנה עם הבנקים הקיימים, שאפשר יהיה להעביר את הכספים האלה לחשבון הבנק הרגיל, שיתנהל לפי כסף וזהב.
Every person has at least 3 different separate trust accounts. So, you know, that's over 900 million accounts for this country alone that we have to be able to take in the receipts from that in order to be able to set up a master account that then allows you to do international trade with gold and silver, lets you do commerce with fiat monies of various kinds, euros and Federal Reserve notes and all the rest of the stuff that's out there. It's really mind-bogglingly complex once you start really grappling with it. But, you know, the most important part, or the most, one of the hardest parts has been simply having the connectivity to the existing system, which would allow us to transfer large piles of money or assets without going through an old-fashioned one-on-one handmade, hand custom built transaction. so that you're actually writing it out, and then you're writing out the code, and you have a contract for delivery. And, if you have to do that for 900 million separate little accounts, imagine what that would mean. 900 million,
That's
yeah, we need it to be automated. And the only way we could automate it was if we had relationships with these other banks that would allow it to come in and at least one point within our system, within our corresponding commercial banks. And that has been difficult to arrange, because basically they viewed us as competitors, and they didn't want to play ball with us at all, even though they knew that they had to, even though they knew that it was our money. They were resisting. And this has been one of the major problems we've had for years, is that, it was only through an API, a handmade solution, that we could continue to bring the money in order to disperse it, or to, credit it to all these different accounts. Well, just the fact that each one of you has 3 different trust accounts attached to your name, minimum of 3, okay, that's 900 million or 980 million accounts just in America. And that does not count all the derivative accounts for quote unquote special purpose vehicles, like all of the different accounts that the Department of Transportation has on you, or all of the accounts that the Department of Defense holds on all of our soldiers. Most of our soldiers have no idea that they have all these accounts attached to their names that are various kinds of trusts and benefits and escrow accounts. And, for example, every mortgage that has ever been written here has had its own separate escrow account. And we think of escrow as something where, the money goes in and then the bank comes and takes it, right? And it's recorded and accounted for. Well, actually, there's a separate account that is an escrow account in your name for every single mortgage you have ever held. So if you're, an average American, and you've had maybe 3 or 4 mortgages in your life, as you bought a house and then you sold it, and you bought another house and had another mortgage and paid for that for several years, and then you moved somewhere else and you sold that house. Every time that you've had a mortgage, you've had an escrow account that was not collected, because it was your credit that was being extended to you. So if you multiply that across 320 million Americans and 6 generations, when I'm talking complexity, I'm talking complexity. When I'm talking big numbers, I'm talking really, 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 really big numbers. And it has to be automated, because you can't sit there and do it one by hand. It's just not possible. And so we've done all of the computer genius work, but we still have to have the connectivity to be able to go in and say get a download of all of the escrow accounts that belong to you from Wells Fargo, from all of the mortgages that you ever held with Wells Fargo, or that you ever held with Bank of America, or any of these smaller lenders. Think about how many different smaller lenders there are. And then think about all of the insurance companies and how the insurances are all interlocked and interwoven. Think about all of the different kinds of insurance policies that you've ever had. I mean, we're talking every single person here probably has 160 different such accounts. That's my off the cuff best guess, is that an average American, just Joe Average, who has lived a normal life and maybe moved 2 or 3 times in his life to a different address, whether in the same city or a different state or whatever, you probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of 160 different accounts. And that's including bank accounts, savings accounts, insurance accounts, real estate accounts, mortgage accounts, land and property accounts, special. Yeah, special purpose vehicles. Every time you had a car, guess what? Every time you had a car in your name. So all this stuff, it's just mind-bogglingly complex, and it has to be computerized, because if it's not, you just cannot sit there. You could not have the manpower deployed to sit there and do each one. You just couldn't do it. So it's important that we have the connectivity to the other system now, so that we can actually begin trading back and forth. I've often talked about this as a teeter-totter, you know, and if you've got an 800-pound gorilla sitting on one end of the teeter-totter, it just sits there, right? There's paralysis. And what we've been seeing has been a financial and fiscal paralysis for several years, where, you know, that 800-pound gorilla.
Imagine it is the year 2030. You walk into a grocery store, you pick up a steak, a bottle of wine, and some coffee. You walk to the checkout, you tap your phone to pay. But instead of a beep, you hear a buzz. A red notification flashes on the screen. Transaction denied. You are confused. You know you have money. You just got paid yesterday. You check your banking app. The balance is there, $5,000. But there is a small alert icon next to the balance. You tap it. A message expands. Carbon allowance exceeded for the month of September. Meat products restricted. You feel a cold knot in your stomach. You put the steak back. You try to buy just the coffee. This time, it works. But then, you notice something else. Your savings account balance is lower than it was last week. You haven't spent anything from it. You check the transaction history. There is a recurring charge labeled negative interest rate adjustment. Because the economy is slow, the Federal Reserve has decided that saving money is bad for the recovery. They want you to spend, so they are taxing your savings at 1% per month. Your money is rotting. It has an expiration date. If you do not spend it, it vanishes. You realize with a terrifying clarity that the money in your account is no longer yours. It is a voucher system. It is a system of permission. You are allowed to spend it, but only on the things they want, when they want, and where they want. This is not a scene from a dystopian sci-fi movie. This is the programmable reality of a central bank digital currency, or CBDC. And the infrastructure to build this reality is being laid right now. It is called FedNow. Most people think we are just upgrading the banking system to make it faster. They think this is about convenience. But convenience is the bait. The hook is control. We are witnessing the end of money as we know it. We are moving from an era of bearer assets where you hold the value to an era of ledger entries where you hold a permission slip. Today, on Finance Prism, we are going to expose the mechanics of the digital dollar. We are going to explain the critical difference between FedNow and a CBDC. We will decode the concept of programmable money and show you how it fundamentally changes the nature of human freedom. And we will answer the most important question. In a world of total financial surveillance, is there any exit door left? This is not a conspiracy theory. This is financial engineering. Welcome to the end of cash. To understand the trap, you first have to understand the mechanism. And right now, the mechanism that is confusing everyone is a new service launched by the Federal Reserve called FedNow. Launched in July of 2023, FedNow is marketed as a revolution in payments. And on the surface, it sounds great. If you have ever tried to send a wire transfer on a Friday afternoon, you know the pain. The money disappears from your account, but it doesn't show up in the other person's account until Monday or Tuesday. In the age of the internet, where emails are instant, why does money take 3 days to move? It takes 3 days because the underlying plumbing of the United States banking system, the Automated Clearinghouse, or ACH, was built in the 1970s. It is a batch processing system. It is like a physical mail truck. It only leaves the station once or twice a day. It is slow. It is outdated. FedNow fixes this. It is a real-time gross settlement system. It allows banks to settle payments instantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. If you send money at 3 a.m. on Christmas morning, it arrives at 3 a.m.
Discover a simple yet brilliant hack to cool down your home in 90 seconds.
It's the size of a small microwave.
and 1 second. So the Federal Reserve says, look, we are just modernizing the rails. We are just helping you get your paycheck faster. And technically they are telling the truth. FedNow is not a CBDC. It is not a new currency. It is a payment rail. But this is where the sleight of hand happens. Think of FedNow as the high-speed railway tracks. Think of the CBDC as the train. You cannot run the train without the tracks. Before the government can introduce a fully digital programmable currency, they first need to condition the population to expect instant digital settlement. They need to get every bank in the country plugged into a centralized infrastructure run directly by the Federal Reserve. FedNow centralizes the plumbing. Before FedNow, banks relied on a mix of private clearinghouses and slow-fed systems. Now, the Federal Reserve is positioning itself as the central hub for every instant transaction in the economy. This creates a network effect. Once every bank, every merchant, and every employer is hooked into the FedNow system because it is fast and cheap, switching to a CBDC becomes incredibly easy. It is just a software update. FedNow is the Trojan horse. It enters the gates of the financial system bearing the gift of convenience. Instant payments, no more waiting. But inside, the belly of the horse lies the infrastructure for total control. It creates a direct line of communication between the central bank and the commercial banking layer that never existed before in real time. It accustoms the public to the idea that the Federal Reserve is a consumer-facing service provider. And once the rails are laid, the train is coming. President Joe Biden issued Executive Order 14067, placing the highest urgency on the research and development of a United States CBDC. The project is not hypothetical. It is in development. They are running pilot programs with major banks right now. So, what exactly is the difference between the digital dollars you have in your Bank of America app right now and a CBDC? Why does it matter if the money is digital? It is already digital, right? The difference is not in the format, the difference is in the ledger. The difference is in who owns the database. Let's dismantle a common myth. People say, I use a credit card for everything. The bank already knows what I buy. Google knows what I buy. Why should I care if the government knows? This is a dangerous false equivalency. Right now, we have a two-tier banking system. When you deposit money at Wells Fargo or Chase, that is a liability of the commercial bank. The database that records your transactions belongs to a private company. Yes, the government can see that data, but they need a warrant. They need a subpoena. There is legal friction. There is a wall, however thin, between the state and your wallet. With a central bank digital currency, that wall is demolished. A, C, B, D, C is a direct liability of the Federal Reserve. The ledger, the list of who owns what and who spent what is held by the central bank itself. This creates a financial panopticon. The panopticon is a concept of a prison where the guard tower is in the center, and all the cells are arranged in a circle around it. The guard can see into every cell at all times, but the prisoners cannot see the guard. Because the prisoners know they might be watched at any moment, they behave as if they are always times being watched. With a CBDC, the Federal Reserve has granular, real-time visibility into every single transaction in the economy. They will know that you bought a bottle of tequila at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. They will know you donated $50 to a controversial political candidate. They will know you bought ammunition. They will know you bought a book about civil disobedience. Currently, cash provides a buffer. Cash is anonymous. Cash is peer-to-peer. When you hand someone a $20 bill, there is no intermediary. There is no server recording the exchange. It is a private interaction between two free citizens. Cash allows for privacy. It allows for dignity. But a CBDC removes the option of privacy. Even if they claim it will be anonymous for small transactions, the code can be changed overnight. Augustine Carstens, the general manager of the Bank for International Settlements, the central bank of central banks, said the quiet part out loud in a video that has now gone viral. He said, quote, "We don't know who's using a $100 bill today, and we don't know who's using a 1,000 peso bill today. The key difference with the CBDC is the central bank will have absolute control on the rules and regulations that will determine the use of that expression of central bank liability, and we will have the technology to enforce that." Did you catch that? Absolute control. Technology to enforce. He is admitting that the goal is not efficiency. The goal is surveillance and enforcement. They want to know every penny you earn and every penny you spend. Why? Because information is power. If they know your spending habits, they can build a profile on you. They can calculate your carbon footprint. They can assess your political alignment. And once they have that data, they can move to the next phase. The phase where they don't just watch what you do with your money, but they tell you what you can do with it. This is the scariest chapter. This is where we move from surveillance to slavery. The unique feature of a digital currency is that it is programmable. Money, for thousands of years, has been a neutral tool. A gold coin does not care who holds it. A gold coin does not care if you buy bread or if you buy a weapon. It is an inanimate object. It represents value and nothing else. A CBDC is not an inanimate object. It is software code. And code can have rules written into it. It can have if-then statements. If the user does X, then the money does Y. Let's look at the mechanisms of control that this technology enables. Mechanism number 1, the expiration date. China has already tested this with their digital yuan. The government can issue money that expires if it is not spent within a certain time frame. Why would they do this? To simulate the economy. If a recession is coming and people are saving money out of fear, the government can simply say, you must spend your stimulus check within 30 days or it disappears. This destroys the function of money as a store of value. You cannot save for the future if your money rots like fruit. It forces you to be a perpetual consumer. Mechanism number 2, negative interest rates. For years, economists have complained about the zero lower bound. They can lower interest rates to zero, but they struggle to go lower because people will just take their cash out of the bank and put it under the mattress. You cannot charge negative interest on physical cash. But if physical cash is banned and you are forced to use a digital dollar, the Fed can simply press a button and apply a negative 2% rate to your savings account. They can confiscate your wealth automatically to force you to spend. You have no escape valve. Mechanism number 3, gated spending. This is where it gets dystopian. The money can be programmed to work only for certain goods or services. Imagine a world where your carbon footprint is tracked. The government decides you have used too much gasoline this month. You go to the gas station, you tap your phone, the transaction fails. Not because you lack funds, but because your funds have been turned off for that specific merchant code. Or imagine you are overweight and the government decides, for your own health, that you cannot buy sugary drinks. Your money works at the vegetable aisle, but it stops working at the soda aisle. Mechanism number 4, political control. We saw a preview of this in Canada during the trucker protests. The government invoked emergency powers and froze the bank accounts of protesters without a court order. They cut them off from the financial system. With a CBDC, this becomes instant and algorithmic. If you are deemed a dissident, or if you score too low on a social credit system, your digital wallet could be frozen. You could be exiled from the economy with a keystroke. You couldn't buy food, you couldn't pay rent, you couldn't buy a bus ticket.
God help us. Okay. Just to kind of give you some idea. People say that Americans don't have any money, that we don't have any gold. And yet you hear these rumors like, oh, Trump went and collected 650 cargo planes full of gold, right? You hear these rumors. I have to be on the big picture end of it, where that kind of amorphous description becomes real. So it's not 650 plane loads, it's 452,000 gold bars. Each one 400 ounces. And that's one account.
So we're not talking about accounts where somebody can just open it and say, here, use the money. We're talking about gold, like actual gold.
We're talking about gold. We're talking about silver. We're talking about rare earth minerals. We're talking about jewels. We're talking about real estate. We're talking about corporate shares, ownership interests in virtually all the Fortune 500 companies are owned by your government. They've been acting as our proxies. They've been managing it all for us without our knowledge. And they've been putting the receipts into generation skipping trusts, offshore generation skipping trusts. So that what happens is that your estate is not your estate, it's the estate of your 4 grandparents. Your child does not inherit from you, they inherit from your parents. And then that way they keep it rolling so that each new generation that's alive is enslaved. And since the generation doesn't know, the present generation doesn't know that they have this inheritance, they never collect. Oh, isn't that convenient? And so it just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. Okay. And these huge investment funds and insurance funds and pension funds and unallocated investment funds. It's just mind-boggling, and then they set aside this little bit that they budget every year. They let everybody focus on the budgeted amount, and all of these fights in Congress and all of these fights in the state legislatures, and everybody glues in on that and takes it so seriously. But that's like 1% or 1/10 of 1% of what's actually there. Okay, so yeah, you're very, very wealthy as a people, but everybody on earth has been well taken care of. And it's just been the mismanagement and the, I guess there's no other word for it, the evil of some interests and some individuals that have resulted in poverty and pollution and disease and all these things that have been so difficult for people all these many years, because they were pulling all of these games with the money and with resources. So now that we're grappling with this, you can begin to get the grasp of there are over 5,000 huge private trust funds. Over 5,000 of them. And they're huge. They're mammoth things. They are they're funds for things like 300 silver mines. And you're just sitting here going, and children in Africa don't have clean water to drink. So we have elderly Navajo Indians sitting on reservations in the Southwest using Crisco cans cans of Crisco to stay warm. What kind of world is this that we're living in? And so the whole thing with global is designed so that everybody has what they need to live and breathe and survive and thrive and have a life. And our world, our earth, has what it needs to be replenished and refurbished and cleaned and cared for. And so being in the middle, having to take in all of this information about all of the assets, and then also at the same time having to try to balance out a system so that each individual man or woman, every child has what they need. It's a mind-boggling proposition. And it is not easy. It is not something you just snap your fingers and there it is. I mean, please bear in mind that Hunter's been working on this entire project since 2007. People think that Global just, walked out of the closet and there it was. No, Hunter's been working on GFG since 2007. Almost 20 years. And you all know how long I've been working on what I've been working on. So these are things that happened over the course of decades. These are efforts that are now coming to fruition that have been engaged for decades. And so I know how frustrating it is. People are sitting there going, well, I have a mortgage to pay today. And I have a problem with the court I have to deal with today, and I need help right now. Well, you and 8 billion others, and we've got people all over the world that are in the same exact situation. So we're beginning to make changes that are going to help. But we're still going to be facing a lot of big decisions as a group, as a country, and we're going to have to get organized to make those decisions. We're going to have to educate ourselves to make those decisions. And we got to survive in the meantime. And our Earth has got to survive in the meantime. So anyway, it is quite literally an overwhelming prospect of what we have to do here. But on the other hand, we don't have any choice. We have to do it because if we don't, we're going to have another extinction level event where all sorts of people die for no good reason.
Anna, it is 6:45. Do you have any other fantastic news you want to share, or are you interested in some questions tonight? I know it is exhausting and you do, no offense, appear a bit tired. So I want to be aware of that. I want you to rest as well. And I know that you've been sick for a week because I have the same sickness shared through the virtualness of our year.
We have a lot of situations here that are very much in flux. I mean, a lot of different shoes in the air, lots of different things happening. I can say overall that it's good. It's very good. We're looking forward to restoring the national capital in Philadelphia. It never really left Philadelphia, but now we're going to take up the challenge and actually be going to Philadelphia, and we're going to be selecting out buildings and assessing whether we need to build new buildings for some of this stuff, or whether we can take over existing government buildings in Philadelphia and use them for new purposes, or so that's going to be exciting, and I think that's going to be a joyous time for everybody to center around our national capital and understand that it's our nation's capital, not a federal capital. DC is a federal capital. It was a separate capital from the day it was set up, and it was a foreign separate capital. So Philadelphia is our true home. It's our true capital. It's our true seat of government for the American government. And it's going to be a great day for us to be able to go home to Philadelphia and say, here we are. We're still here. 250 years later, and we're still here. And I'm inviting all the organizations like the Daughters of the Revolution and the Sons of the Revolution and the veterans organizations and everybody that cares about this country to really look forward to having our national capital restored. Instead of it being some dusty memory of 250 years ago, to have it be an actual factual, you can go there and you can find your courts in session there, and you can find your government in session there. Imagine it.
Yeah. And I do want to, for those who weren't here last week, I want to share that I became a Daughter of the American Revolution last Saturday. And I encourage everyone to do your genealogy and find your lineage, because there's almost no chance with the fire burning in your gut that you don't have actual family members who did the real hard work. And I'm super excited about that. And I think that, yes, this is going to be an amazing 2026. How about a couple of questions? Just a couple?
Sure, let's go for it.
Okay, David Herrick, quickly, please.
Hi, Anna. With all this wonderful info on the value and the assets that you have gathered together, I mean, that's a lot right there. Well, I know that last week you were giving us some priorities on how we might move forward. First of all, by getting the LEOs on our side, and then after that's done, work on the next layer. So I was interested in what you were saying last week. I was wondering if you could say a little bit more about what we all should be, how can we help the most?
The individual people and the individual families and the homes and what we would think of as the private sector, right?
Right.
So, talking to people is probably the best thing that you can possibly do. Just, start.
טוב, זה הווידאו שרציתי לעדכן אתכם על החדשות לגבי החשבון שמגיע לכל אחד כספים. הישראלים לא רוצים לקבל, כי הם אומרים, מי ייתן לנו כסף? מאיפה הכסף? אז אני מציעה לכולם, הגיע הזמן שתדעו שהבנקים האלה בארץ, של הרוטשילדים, הם בנקים פרטיים שבזזו וגנבו את הציבור בריביות שקר, בשיתוף פעולה עם כל מיני תאגידים ששמו הוראות עיכול על משהו שאותו אחד אמר, לא שילם חשבון טלפון או חשמל או ארנונה, שמו לו עיקולים או כנסות. הם הרגישו נוח שאפשר לבצע כל דבר בחשבון כאילו זה חשבון שלהם. שהם בעצם פגעו באנשים, במקום להבין שאם הם עסק פרטי, הם אמורים לתת לנו שירות בלבד. וזכותנו לבחור אם להיות איתם, אבל לא לעבור ולהכתיב לנו חוקים שמישהו ישים לנו עיקולים, כולל הממשלה. ולכן זה לא מקום לחסוך. מי שחושב שזה היה מקום נהדר לחסוך, ומקום נהדר לבצע איזה שהם פעולות, שיחשוב פעמיים מה בעצם נתן הבנק, וכל המשכנתאות שהם יצרו ריביות ענק, ושבעצם לא היה שום כסף במערכת, אלא אנחנו יצרנו את הכסף. זה נכון שזה נשמע הזוי, מי שכבר למד והתקדם, זה בדיוק העניין שאנחנו לקחנו תעודה. איך הם אמרו לכם בבנק? היום הבנק דורש ממכם, זה שיא החוצפה, עסק פרטי, תחשבו שאתם נכנסים למקדונלד, אומר לכם, כדי לעשות לך המבורגר וצ'יפס, אני יודעת מה, יעלה לך כך וכך, אבל אני צריך תעודה מזהה. התעודה המזהה שלך היא לא תקפה, לך תחליף אותה לדיגיטלי, אחרת אני לא יכול לתת לך המבורגר. אז אותו דבר זה הבנק, הם לא שונים, זה אותה קטגוריה. הם בנקים פרטיים למטרות רווח, ומתנהלים על ידי אותם אנשים שמחזיקים את המדינה. לא סתם אדון רוטשילד החליט לקנות את כל המניות מהאנשים של בנק ירושלים, כי כמו שהראיתי לכם סרטון קצר, CBDC, ולא זו בלבד, יש הרבה קומבינות מעבר לזה, שאנשים לא מודעים לזה, איך הבן אדם חוגג. וישראל הייתה מחלבה נהדרת עבורו, מכל הבחינות. גם השימוש בחיילים, השימוש בילדים שלנו, שימוש בתעודות לידה מסחריות. רוטשילד היה, בוא נגיד, הוא החלק המסוים, ומי שמחזיק את הוותיקן, כל הקבוצה שלה, הם גם שותפים לתרמית. אם תסתכלו בנובמבר, תעשו גוגל על, נדמה לי, State of Palestine, תראו את הוותיקן, תראו אותו חוגג על מה, ותתחילו לבדוק מה הם מבצעים מאחורי הקלעים, כאשר הם מעסיקים אותנו בשקרים יומיים על קטע של בחירות. אין לנו למה לבחור, כי זה עסק פרטי שרשום בדן אנד ברדסטריט, הכנסת היא מותג של State of Israel. אין ממשלה, לא קיימת ממשלה שלנו, זה שייך לגוף זר, שתקע את היתדות, ואנחנו בהסכמה, כי זה לפי חוקי מסחר, אם אנחנו מסכימים ושותקים ולא מהווים התנגדות, זו הזדמנות שאני אראה לכם, משהו קטן, זה אומר שאתם מוכנים לקבל את כל הגזרות שיתנו לכם. ולא נשארה אופציה אחרת, נשארה אופציה אחת, זה ניתוק מוחלט. רגע, שמתי משהו, כן, אוקיי, זה.
Here's one of the biggest secrets in commerce, and it flips everything you think you know. Their silence counts as agreement. Your silence does not. Two completely different rules. Two completely different systems. In common law, a man is never bound by silence. You only agree by choice. Never.
יש חוקי ומשפטי, צריך להפריד ולהבדיל. כשאנחנו אנשים החיים וחושבים שאנחנו חיים, כן? שלא יצרו לנו תעודות לידה שקריות, יש את החוקים שהם לאנשים החיים, ויש את המשפטי, שזה חוקי הים, לפיקציות, למסחר, כיוון שלא ידענו שקיימים שני מערכות, הם רימו ונתנו לנו להיות הבעלים על יצירה שהם יצרו, ולכן הם חוקקו חוקים שכיוון שאנחנו מחזיקים את היצירה, אנחנו גם נשלם עליה. כאילו לקחתם את התמונה של החתול, ואתם תשלמו עליה. אתם לא לקחתם את החתול המקורי, החתול המקורי אבוד בים, נשלח בספינה, ולקחתם תמונה, אבל כדי להחזיק את התמונה הזאת, יהיה לכם כנסות אם לא תשלמו בזמן, תצטרכו לשלם כל מיני מיסים להחזיק את זה, וזה מה שאנחנו עושים. אז יש פה הסבר מדויק בנוגע לדבר הזה.
Never by failing to answer, but in commerce. If an officer, council, agency, or company fails to respond to your notice, your terms stand. Your conditions are accepted. Their silence becomes agreement by default.
אז שתדעו שאנחנו שולחים, כמו שעשיתי את המכתבים, אם הם לא מגיבים, אם הם לא מודיעים, השתיקה היא באותו דבר כמו, זאת אומרת שכל מה שאנחנו רשמנו הוא בעצם נכון, ושתיקתם מהווה הסכמה למה שאנחנו כתבנו ואמרנו. אז אנחנו יכולים לשחק בשני המישורים האלה בדיוק כמוהם, לכתוב מכתבים עם notice of liability, התראה בדבר חבות, אם הם לא עונים תוך 30 יום, שולחים להם tacit agreement, שזה על ידי שתיקה סימן שהם הסכימו, ואז יש להם בעיה מאוד רצינית, כי הם צריכים לקום ולעזוב את המקום שלהם. גם מכתב שלישי שאנחנו כבר יכולים לגבות כספים, כאילו אם מראש אמרנו שאם לא תהיה איזושהי הענות, אנחנו נחייב אותם יומית כספים עצומים. על המרמה, שקר, בגידה, וזה מה שצריך לעשות לכל אחד. יש מישהו במדינה ששלח מכתב לביבי? להראות שהחיסון יעיל ובטוח, שהוא כל כך הילל. יש אחד שכתב מכתב כזה? לא. יש אחד שכתב לבנט? זה עצוב מאוד, אבל אנחנו צריכים להיות החזקים, כולנו יחד, כי אנחנו רבים. מה הוא? יש לו כאילו את המאפיה, המשטרה שהוא מחזיק היום, היא לא משרתת אותנו. היא משרתת את התאגיד, כי זאת חברה בעם, כולם. יש את הזכיין הבריטי, שהוא כאילו יש לו את השלוחות של קבלני משנה, כמה קבלני משנה, ואז יש את כל הנותני שירותים. בגלל זה הם קראו לזה רשות. תחליפו את האותיות טיפה, תראו שזה שירות. וזה מה שהם עושים. נותני שירותים שהם עושים את זה עבורם, למטרות רווח. וביום שלא תשתמשו בהם, לא ייכנס להם כספים, ולא יהיה צורך בהם. ויש דרך לבצע את זה, אבל אנשים בוחרים להסתכל מה היה ב-X, או מה אמרו בערוץ 12 ו-13 ו-14, ולספר האם זו החיים שאנחנו רוצים, האם זה, אבל לא לבצע שום דבר. כולם מדברים. אבל ביצוע ולנסות לחפור וללמוד איך לבצע, נדה. אז טוב, אני אמשיך עם זה.
That's why they avoid replying. They rely on you answering quickly, emotionally, out of fear. But when you put terms, questions, or conditional acceptance in writing, and they fail to rebut it with evidence, liability, and oath, their silence is admission. Commerce has rules. They know them. Most people don't, and with a private trust, this becomes even stronger. You communicate as trustee, not as the legal person.
פה יש גם את הנושא שאם אתה פותח טראסט, שזה קרן נאמנות, ואתה טרסטי, אתה מתנהל איתם דרך זה שזה גם בשבועת אמת, יש כמה דרכים לבצע את זה, שאנחנו מתכתבים איתם, ואז זה הרבה יותר חזק ממכתב בבית משפט, והם מחויבים. ומגן עליך מהרבה בחינות, הנושא הזה של הטרסט.
If they don't answer the trust's terms, the trust's position stands. That's why trusts are so powerful. They operate where silence has consequences. So remember, when they stay silent, you win. When you stay silent, you're still free. Only one side is bound by silence, and it's not you. That's the power of notice. That's the power of terms. That's the power of knowing the rules they hoped you'd never learn. Here's one of the biggest...
אוקיי, זה הכל להיום. סוף שבוע נפלא.
And it flips everything you think you know. Their silence counts as agreement.